Hi guys. So in this video I want to show you how to create a update user form using Angular. So this is what the finished form looks like. It's a simple update form used for updating the user model in a given Angular application. So it's got username, email, full name, age. It also has validation, so it's a reactive form in Angular, and it uses real-time validations that disable the submit button if any or all fields are invalid. So if we enter it again, so we can see that it works on every field. And so over here, and we've also got an email validator. So Angular recognizes that this string is not a valid email. As soon as we do add any valid email, the error goes away. And if we submit, and we get a toast message saying the user updated successfully. So this is just covering the front end of the form. It's not going to cover the back end or updating the user in the application database. So it'll be just the front end. So let's get started. So first step we need to do is we need to create a update user form component in Angular. The way we do that is by typing the command generate ng-generate component user update form. When you run this command, Angular generates a set of files in a folder called update user form, and it creates that in the application structure, in the file structure. So if we go through each file, what it does is this is the components TS file, which contains the logic that will be rendered to the template file, which is this one, application update user form component.html. This contains the actual form, which will be rendered to whatever window the component is rendered to. This is a spec file, basically doing some basic unit tests on the component. And this is just a CSS file to give some extra CSS styles to make sure our form component looks nice. So that's update user form. You will also get a notification and notice that the update user form component has been added to the declarations array in the app.module file. So the reason for doing this is that Angular needs to know that this is a valid component. So we can see that app component, which is the main component in Angular default applications, and the update user form component has been automatically added by Angular. So now that we're done that, we can move on to the TS file logic. So I'll cover the imports first. So we're importing component init, user service, user, form group, form builder, validators, form control, hot toast service. So what we're doing here is component and on init are pretty vital for a component. You need a component directive on top for Angular to know that this code belongs to a component, and on init is a interface that allows us to use the Angular lifecycle methods such as ng-on-init and submit and so on. User service is a file that is a service that I have generated. We won't go into the details of it. Basically just know that the user service is used to upload the form data to the backend server upon form submission. So basically on submit, we'll use the update user method in the user service to update user form values, and then on success we'll show the update successfully toast message. So that's what it's used for. The user model is used for containing and pre-populating the form values. So the user model is used in select user variable. It's used to pre-populate all these fields here. So basically the update user form component is passed in the user data through a parent component, and that data is added to the selected user variable, which is then added to the form, which we will cover later. Form builder, form group, validator, form control. So these are just standard Angular classes from the Angular Forms library. Hot Toast service, this is a third-party library used for generating toast messages. Now let's get into our fields in this component. So I covered selected user, basically the user that is currently logged in, that will be whose data will be used in update user form. So update user form is a form group, and we use form builder to give a default instantiation for it, because without it, for example, if we try this, yeah, we get an error from Angular because it has no initializer and not assigned. So we need to assign it a value. For now, it's assigned a null group value, but later on we'll add the actual data. So form ready Boolean variable is used to indicate when the form is ready and when it's not. Basically, before rendering the form, we need to get the data from the user into the update user form component and then render. So this variable, this Boolean, is very useful in controlling that rendering step. Component is this, so it's referencing the actual component itself. I'm not sure that's even necessary for this tutorial, but we'll move on. Form errors. So form errors are used for each of the form fields. So we have 4 fields, and this object will store any errors picked up by Angular. Validation messages are all the error messages that can be produced for each field in the form. So for username, we have required. Username is required. So if it's an empty field, like right now, that message was generated by this key value pair. Name must be at least 4 characters, cannot be longer than 24 characters, and we actually have a forbidden name. Somebody named Bob cannot be a hero. And then we have email address, so required, which is standard for all the fields, and then we have email. So email is not valid. If the email is in an invalid format, the email is not valid and the user cannot submit the form. So that's because of this email validator. So let's move on. In the constructor, we initialize the user service, form builder, and hot toast service. User service is used to upload the form data to the backend. Form builder is used to build the form, and hot toast service is used to generate the toast message that lets the user know the update form has been submitted successfully. Setup form is where we set up the update user form using formbuilder.group, and we initialize these fields, so username, email address, full name, and age. With the exception of ID, all these fields will be shown on the form. ID will not be shown because that's something that the user is not allowed to change. So these are all form control instances, and they are passed the this.selectedUsers information. So selected user's username, email address, full name, and age. Then we pass an array of validators. So we pass in the validators required, validator's email for the email address, and then the basic validators that are required for full name and age. You can make additions to this. You can go a step further and put the min length, max length, and forbidden named, or you could make custom validators and add it to this array. So it's really up to you what you want to do, but this is just a basic overview. And then finally, we're going to use the value changes event listener, which basically listens on for whenever a value changes. So a value change is something like this. So anything, even if you touch the form with the mouse, if you click anything on the form, that it's considered a value change, and upon which this dot value change method will be triggered. So that's all this code is doing. Basically, if a value changes, call this method. Now we load the user data. So this load user data form is used to manually load a user to the selected user variable. This is not a good practice. It's just merely used for the purposes of this tutorial to keep it simple. Yeah, we're manually loading the user, but normally you would have, in a real-world application, you would have this selected user variable be given the data from a parent component that will give the data to this component, and then this component will populate the this.user variable with the given data. So the ng-on-init method is a Angular lifecycle hook method that will be fired after the constructor is finished executing its code. So when the ng-on-init method is fired, the form is not yet rendered. So this is before rendering, and what it does is it loads the user data. So it loads the user data, loads the user first, then it sets up the form. So set up the form with the loaded user data, and then it sets the form ready variable to true. So now that Angular knows that the form is ready. And then we have the onSubmit method, which will be fired when the user clicks the update form button. It sends a HTTP, it calls the update user service method, which then sends a HTTP request to the back end of the application, and upon success we produce these toast.success toast message to notify the user, and if it's an error we say console.log, we log out the error to the console. The onValue change method is used to see what errors the the form holds upon each form change. So if I change this value right now, the onValue change method was actually fired. So anytime the form actually changes, the onValue change method will be fired, and it will check the form for any errors. And if there are errors, what it does is it uses the validations messages object to add form errors into the this.formErrors object, so that the this.formErrors object can render its messages onto the screen, like so. Okay. So that covers everything for the TS file. Let's move on to the HTML file. So we're using a reactive form in Angular. So all reactive forms will need a form group directive, and what it does is it lets Angular know that this form is actually a form group with the name update user form. Then we use the ngIf directive to put the form on hold until the update user form variable is generated. So until this variable is generated, until this form object is instantiated, the form will not be rendered to the user. And then we say ng on submit, ng submit on submit, so it's calling the submit method in the TS file. So we have a input field username, and with this username is given the form control name, temporary local variable name. And what this does is it gives this form input a name, and it also helps Angular identify that username belongs to the form group. So form control name helps identify and group the form controls with the form group. And also I want to add that if we go to form control right here, so if we didn't have a username field right here, let's say we comment this out, let's see what happens. Let's open the dev tools, and we should run into an error. So see, we cannot find control with the username. That's because Angular looks for a form control called username in the TS file in update user form group object, but it couldn't find it, and therefore it threw an error. So once we add that back in, the error is gone. Okay. So, and then we use ngIf directive to check the form errors object .username key to find if there are any errors. If an error was found, then this element will be rendered, and the form errors will be displayed with a red text because alert danger class has been added. So, and all the other fields are basically doing the same thing. So form errors.email address, form errors.email address, and we use form control name for each and every one of the form control form fields. And then finally we get to the submit button. We say disabled update user form valid. So if update user form is not valid because of the bang operator, then disable this button. So we don't want the user to be able to submit a form that is invalid, because that goes against the application logic. So we disable the update button and enable it upon when the user form is valid. So that's it for the template file. And since we're doing the validations in the actual form itself, like all reactive forms should, we don't need to check if the form is valid in the onSubmit method, because it's already been done on the template, and we can just focus on submitting the data to the backend. So that's it for that. If you want to know how I got the toast message, I can show you real quickly. So what you have to do is you have to install this package, npm install ngneat overview 1 ngneat hot toast. Install these two packages, and then you have to go to your app.module file and then import this. So hot toast module from ngneat hot toast, and then you have to add hot toast module to your imports as hot toast module for root. You add that there, and then you can come to your component.ts file in your component and then import this. So hot toast service, instantiate in the constructor to a variable first, which is here, toast, and then we can use this.toast success or whatever you want. it has a number of options. So success, warning, observe, loading, error, whatever you want. So that's how I displayed the toast messages. Let me see quickly if I missed anything. Yeah, so that concludes this video. Oh, sorry, hold on, I have to show you how. So in here we have the component with the selector app update user. So in order to display this form to the main window of the application, we have to insert update user app update user selector tags for the app component. So anything in this page will be shown at HTTP localhost port 4200, and we're actually running into an error. Let's see why this is. I'd have to start it back up again. Yeah, so that's basically it for this video. Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it if you watch the whole video, and please make sure to subscribe because it helps me make more videos and lets me know that you guys are actually enjoying what I'm putting out and it's actually helping you. Please like my video. Check in the description for the source code for this application if you ever get stuck, so you can get help debugging. I've actually posted my blog post link about this tutorial as well, so if you really need my personal help, you can post a comment on that blog post and I'll do my best to reply to it. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Have a nice day, guys. Bye.